This is part 2 of the carbohydrates review. Let's talk about where carbohydrates are found in foods. So if you consider the food groups in the my plate, you can see that carbohydrates are found primarily in grains and fruits and dairy. Because look at the numbers here, 12 grams per serving, 18 grams per serving, 15 grams per serving. Vegetables have very little carbohydrate because they're mostly fiber and water. Fruits tend to have more because they have that fructose. Dairy obviously has that lactose. And protein foods that come from meat do not have carbohydrates at all. And nuts have very little. The only ones that do in the meat and bean group are beans. Eggs wouldn't have carbohydrates. And dairy does have a significant source as lactose. Okay, so if you want to write down all the carbohydrates that you ate in a day, you can do that and then do this little scorecard where you give yourself a point for every whole grain that you ate. And remember, for whole grain, it has to have 100% whole wheat. A point if a food is high in soluble fiber, things like oats and fruits. A point for a food high in insoluble fiber, so things like whole wheat bread, cereals, whole grain pastas, the peels of fruits and veggies. And then you'll get an additional 3 points if half of all the grains that you ate are whole grains. But then you get a point off for every refined grain. So anything that lists enriched white flour, enriched flour as the first ingredient, is a refined grain. It does not have fiber in it. And then you get a point off for every soda or food with added sugar, so candy, any type of Gatorades. And then you get 3 points off if you have less than half your grains as whole grains. So try this little activity and you can kind of see how you're doing on your carbohydrate intake. So how much do we need of carbs every day? Well, we need a minimum of about 130 grams in a day so that we can use sufficient carbohydrates for our brain. So this is called the amount that's needed to avoid ketosis. It's the absolute minimum. It's not what you should have. It's just the minimum that you need. For fiber, we need about 25 to 35 grams a day. And for sugar, we want less than 50 grams a day or less than 10% of calories. Now keep in mind, this is not sugar from lactose or fructose that is found naturally in foods. This is added sugar. Okay? So again, the RDA is 130 grams for adults. That's the minimum amount. Keep in mind that the average intake is around 250 to 300 grams a day. And about half of our calories every day should come from carbs. The best source of carbs are fruits, vegetables, and whole grains. So people always think carbs are bad, but we do need to eat them every day. So what I usually tell people is that about half of your calories should be from carbs, and of that, at least half of those should be from whole grains. You really want to minimize the amount of sugar that you intake. Okay, and fiber, 25 to 38 grams. Most Americans are eating like half of that. There is a thing as too much fiber, but it's very hard to achieve. And for sugar, you want sugar to be less than 10% of your entire calories of the day, and again, this is added sugar, or less than 50 grams a day. And that's according to the World Health Organization. So this question always comes up, does eating too much sugar cause diabetes? No, but eating too much sugar could lead to some of these things like being overweight and having lots of abdominal weight because of the excess calories. Just like we saw, as sugar intake increases in the United States, obesity rates increases. So it's not necessarily sugar that's causing the diabetes, it's gaining that weight. And what happens when people become overweight is that their cells don't really like that insulin very well. The receptors don't take to that insulin. So that leads to diabetes. Type 1 diabetes is when the body doesn't make any insulin. This is a genetic predisposition. It happens typically in young, less than 20-year-olds. And type 2 diabetes is typically caused by insulin resistance, where the cells don't like the insulin. And this is the primary cause of this is being overweight. So this can happen in a variety of age groups depending on someone's weight. Gestational diabetes is a condition in which a woman who is not diabetic may, for a short period of time during pregnancy, become diabetic. So again, this kind of shows you the differences in the two types. Most of the cases of diabetes we see in this country are type 2. And this, like I said, is the insulin resistance. There is a strong genetic piece, but obesity and sedentary lifestyle. We typically try to treat this with diet. These people have to have insulin. These people can do it mostly with diet, exercise, and oral medications. We kind of just reviewed this. And the last part of your book talks a little bit about metabolic syndrome, and this is kind of a almost diabetic symptom with high blood fats and high blood pressure. And the problem with this has got a strong link to heart disease, and it's estimated that almost a quarter of Americans have it. And that's it. Thanks so much.